Hello and welcome to this developer interview, the second developer interview with Nathanael Weiss of Wizardfoo, the creator of Songbringer. So Nathanael, before I get onto the questions I've got, how's the last month been? Because it's been, what, about a month and a half since the game launched?
Oh, it's been really great. It's so good to have it out there and be over the whole stressful experience of releasing.
Yeah.
And now working on updates. So it's really fun and creative where I'm working on a new boss, new abilities, a new item. And it's just quite exciting to be in that creative flow and to have most of the bugs fixed, and just there's still some bugs left to finish, but quite exciting times right now.
Okay, talking about updates, so how are you finding that process? Because obviously you've got it on Steam, you've got it on PlayStation Store, and you've got it on Xbox Live. How are you keeping that all in sync? Are you even updating them at the same time, or is it PC first and we'll sort of A/B test that and then do the others after? What's the sort of process you're taking, and what's the general process?
Well, the general process is I will put stuff that's ready to be tried out and experimented with as soon as possible to the beta branch on Steam.
Okay.
So players on the PC version can try out these new features ahead of time if they opt in to the beta branch, and that's a really easy switch in your Steam client. And then as that gets a little bit of testing, and also I'll go in and actually play the Steam version all the way through, doing an entire speed run to make sure the whole game is still good. And that's just, verifies that these new features are working, that they aren't breaking anything else significant in the game. Just that the game is still functioning as it did, but it also has these new features. And then the process is, once that's all ready, then I actually release it to the Steam public branch and the GOG client, and I'll send all my code over to Double 11, who is handling the Xbox version and the PlayStation version.
Okay, that sounds good. So the PC version is the test bed, and that's what gets released first, and then only after that the console ports. Okay, that sounds good. What sort of time frame has it been on average between obviously one version and then the next version? So when it goes into beta, how long after roughly does it go into the public release?
Well, it depends on what kind of features are being created. Usually I can get things through the beta branch in about a week. So, but lately I'm working on some bigger features and a whole new boss and things like that. So this particular one might take anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks to get all the way through the beta and ready for the public release.
Okay, that sounds good. I remember in the first developer interview you mentioned that you use Mac over Windows for development as your main machine. You tested on Windows, I believe you said. Why, from your perspective, why do you choose Mac over Windows for development?
Well, I prefer Mac because it's a Unix-based operating system mostly. I used to use Windows exclusively. I tried out Linux in college and really fell in love pretty fast with the Unix Unix-based operating systems. I love them. I love that every file has 3 different kinds of permissions. I love just the way everything's set up in the file systems and stuff. I love how open source everything is. I love how you can compile almost every bit of your operating system. And Mac is kind of like the extension of that, but with a really nice polish on top of everything, and the ability to run lots of your common software. And over Windows, it's got the advantage that you really aren't getting spyware and viruses and all sorts of just like crummy things you get on Windows on accident from time to time. So I prefer it for development, and it's also faster for me, or at least maybe it's just because I run an actual Mac piece of hardware. I have a MacBook Pro laptop, and I find that it's much faster for just the simplest of things, like unzipping a file, for example, is a lot faster on Mac versus Windows. The same thing with running my game, Songbringer. For some reason, it just runs faster on Mac. So I don't know why.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. Because as a developer myself, I mainly use Mac as well. I've got a Windows machine, and if it's like a cross-platform game on desktop, then I will test it on PC as well. But my PC mainly is used either as a media server or as my main gaming machine, because obviously, as you know, the Steam library is predominantly for Windows. But I agree, because it's based on Unix. When you're doing development, especially mobile development, you can have a lot of almost like native level features, and it just runs faster, certain elements do, and there's just certain drivers that are just built in from Unix, and as a result it's just less hassle when you're setting stuff up, especially for Android. So that's the main reason I gear towards it for development purposes.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you have any plans for mod support in the future? Or maybe that is the next big update?
You know what? I had planned that from the start, and now that the game is finished, I'm not sure that I'll actually go and do all that work, because I'd rather start the next game, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, you could actually go right now and mod Songbringer. It's built for that. Every bit of all the enemies have all these property lists and stuff.
Yeah.
They're in plain old text files. They're written in this data format that's actually pretty easy to read, and you can just hop in there and start modifying the properties of enemies and even modifying their AI. And it's like that for the rest of the world too. The world's graphics, its colors, images, and things like that. You can modify all that in plain text. And you could run Songbringer with all your own mods and change all the graphics and everything, and you could do all that without any documentation. You just started experimenting and hacking at it. And what'll happen is the game has this feature where it checks itself to see if it's been modified, and so it doesn't upload scores to the leaderboards if you've modified your version of Songbringer. Okay. So you can go ahead and mod away right now.
Okay, that sounds good. So what would happen if, let's say I modded it, I played it a bit, and then I reverted the file back, so I backed up the file, and so it went back to its original state. Would I need to re-download Songbringer for the scores to go to the server, or does that check that you mentioned handle that going back and forth?
Oh, that's a good question. Yes, you can totally unmodify the files, and it would once again recognize that it's in its pristine state, yeah, if you will, and yes, upload scores to the leaderboard.
Okay.
It's also got one little feature too, which makes that process pretty easy, because all of the assets for the whole game are zipped up into a zip file, but it's just renamed from the extension zip to just zp. Yeah. So all you got to do is just change assets.zp to assets.zip and unzip it, and you'll have an assets folder. And then you can essentially just rename the do whatever you want with the ZP file and just modify the assets folder. The game can run from an assets folder or the assets zip file. And when you're ready to go back and play the actual version of Songbringer, you can just rename or move the assets folder and just rename it or move back the assets zip file.
That sounds really cool. So after this call, I'm probably going to jump into that folder and into the other general config files just to see what I can do. So now that the game's been out for over a month, what, if any, technical limitations have you faced with managing the game post-release?
Oh, you know what? That's actually been quite smooth sailing. I really haven't run into many technical issues. I guess probably because the game was in beta for so long. I mean, it was over a year. Yeah. And I had fixed a lot of things along the way, even from like little issues like DLL files. So yeah, Songbringer runs completely without any, what are those called? Those redistributable files from Visual C++. you don't need any of that because it includes all the DLL files, and that's one of the little technical limitations that had to be overcome during the beta period. But now that that's all solid, really it's run pretty smoothly on Steam, GOG, and from what I understand, the console versions are just as good too. So
sounds good. Sounds good. So it hasn't been that long since the release, as I mentioned, but with all the press coverage and obviously the sales and all that stuff, how has your life changed on a micro and macro level going into essentially post-release?
Well, on a macro level, at first I was kind of like burned out a little bit. I was like, I don't know if I can create the next game right now. And I knew I had, 3 more months or so working on Songbringer. I'll at least be working on it through December. So I was kind of like tired because I had really pushed quite hard at the end to release the game. It's just it can be very stressful getting so many elements in alignment to get a release to happen. So after a month of kind of like just really, I kind of took September really easy. I just focused on simple bug fixes and things like that, and communicating with people online on the forums and stuff like that. So it made September kind of a little bit more of a relaxed month, and it really helped me to get my mind back in the state where I'm getting excited about creating the next game. So I'm starting to think of ideas, what I want Songbringer 2 to be like, what direction the characters will go in, and what kind of game it will be, whether it will be procedural or maybe I'll make one that's not procedural for the next one. So I'm quite excited to start Songbringer 2 sometime in 2018, early 2018.
That sounds fantastic. So what about on a micro level then? Because on a macro level it seems to have gone well. What about on the micro level?
Well,
is your routine still the same? Is anything in that change? Are you freed up now or less so?
Yeah, I think probably the most important thing that's happened on a micro level is I've allowed myself to start taking a couple days off a week. And that's huge. And I think it's something I need to do for the rest of my life. Like I used to be, developing 7 days a week and at least 8 to 10 hours per day, 7 days a week. And that lifestyle is not sustainable. Like I ended up ignoring, not ignoring, but just kind of pushing back things in my life that are important, like friendships. I didn't really, call friends as much when I was in my super busy state of making Songbringer. So little things like that. I'm taking a day off, at least one whole day off per week right now. And that's also really helping me to like have a better, it's keeping me more healthy overall. My body's healthier, my mind's healthier. I'm starting to get excited about creating the next game. So that's important. It's something I need to keep up for life, is just to take at least one whole day off per week, and not work at all.
Yeah, I think that's some good advice, obviously not just for yourself. I think every listener out there that's doing, whether it's a technical project or a non-technical project, whether you're doing it for yourself or a big company, make sure you take the time off to recharge, make sure you take the time off to see friends, family, and, well, enjoy stuff that you want to enjoy, whether it's a movie, a game, walking, whatever. So, yeah. Definitely good advice. So have you had any suggestions from the community which you would like to implement into Songbringer or in a future game, or that you've already implemented? And if so, what are those features?
Well, there is one new feature that kind of came from people chatting in the forums on Steam, and that is when, and it also came from watching people's Let's Plays.
Yeah.
So I've watched a lot of YouTube videos of people doing Let's Plays of Songbringer, and read all the reviews and things like that. And one feature that's been added recently was I noticed that people when they would die in Songbringer, quite often people would go straight back to the place where they died. And I was always confused by that, because I thought that most people would be like, oh, I died there, maybe I'll go try something else. But almost everyone I ever saw would go straight back to that room over and over and over again, and just kept dying and dying and dying. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is, it's like the player is ruining it seemed like they're ruining their own experience to me. But then I realized that people love a challenge. People like want to see what happens when they can defeat that room or get past that. They want to overcome the challenge. So I tried to create a way that made Songbringer a little bit more helpful. So when you die in any like dungeon room that doesn't have a boss, you get the skeleton is left behind. It's called a courage skeleton. It's glowing with courage. So when you come back to that room after you died, you'll see that skeleton there. And if you die again in that room, the skeleton will release its courage and recharge like 3 teeth worth of your courage, which is your health in the game. And so it's kind of like a clutch bit of courage just in the nick of time. It restores that health when you die, and you get another chance to kind of beat that room. So it's something that I hope helps players out and makes the design of the game feel a little bit better, because Songbringer is such a permissive game. It allows you to go anywhere. It's really easy to get caught in those situations where you're in a pretty difficult room because maybe you haven't found the items yet that you need to make that room a little bit easier, or maybe you're in a really difficult dungeon, something like that. So I hope this kind of improves the overall design of Songbringer without really changing that much.
Okay, that sounds like a really cool feature. So, having created this game now and managed it for over a month post-release, for your next project, would you want to go lower level in terms of the code, or higher and use a more like WYSIWYG style game engine, maybe like Game Maker?
Oh, I'll never use WYSIWYG game editors. I hate them. To be quite honest, at least I should say I do not prefer to use software to make games. I prefer to have all the source code and just compile it from Vim. I don't even really like using Xcode or Visual Studio that much. I prefer to compile from the command line and edit text or edit my code in Vim.
Okay, so do you plan on maybe going even lower level perhaps and doing certain things as lower? So because you use Cocos 2DX for the PC version, maybe doing some more native side stuff and integrating that into your Cocos project, or are you sort of happy at the technical level that you're at with the game?
Well, I actually would like to improve that a little bit and go a little bit more lower level. In particular with my entity component system that I made for Songbringer, but then released publicly. It's called Entity Foo, and it's a C++, basically entity component system. And I want to rewrite that in C, and rewrite all of the components and everything that I wrote for Songbringer, like render component, position component, profile component, move component, all those components. I'd like to basically rewrite all those in C as well, so that the game compiles faster. So I'm really tired of slow compilation.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, that sounds really good. Do you plan on having a go at doing that before your next project, or is it something you'll see out when you feel like you're ready based on your other commitments?
Oh yeah, I'll do that before the next project. Okay. It'll probably, I can imagine that only taking like a week or two, just to rewrite things from C to C++ is not that much different.
Yeah. Okay, do you plan on open sourcing that C version, that C branch as well?
Yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic. I'll whack a link in the description for all the listeners out there for Entity Foo, and obviously the Songbringer game as well, so you can check that out. So overall, what advice would you give now compared to a month ago? Because I remember you gave some advice then. Now that you've done this, you've released the game, it's been over a month, you've managed it, you've relaxed a bit, you've gone back into it. What advice would you give? Almost like if you could talk to yourself from 6 months ago or even 12 months ago, what advice would you give to yourself then?
Well, I guess it would have to be the same advice, to just take a day off per week. Even in the heat the highest stress levels of the whole game.
Yeah.
Like, even then, you think my thoughts 6 months ago would have been, oh, but if I take a whole day off, I'll be getting less done each week, and there's no way I can do that because I have so much to do. But I really believe that if I had taken a whole day off, I would have been more refreshed, and it would have made those other 6 days more effective. So, yeah, that's the advice I would give myself. It's kind of the advice I would have given myself a month ago as well, but I really didn't have that much time for it all to sink in. And now that it's sunk in, I really know this is my path forward. And I hope that other people can see that too, realize that too for themselves. Like me just telling someone, hey, you should take a day off every week, it's probably not going to work. But once a person realizes that for themselves, then then it sticks.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'd say try it.
Okay, that sounds like good advice. So, what's been annoying or frustrating for you throughout the last month? Maybe something has changed, or things have come up, or maybe because the pace has in a way slowed down. Maybe that's been annoying because you've been used to this sort of high intense pace for so long. Maybe you're having trouble adjusting to that, or is just everything fantastic?
Well, actually, it's actually quite nice to have a little bit of a slower pace. And I'm really enjoying that, just like having, a healthier pace. But I guess, there's really, I don't have much to complain about. Things are in a really good place right now. I guess really the only thing I need to do is just keep moving and keep moving forward and keep growing. And I guess the hardest thing right now is actually getting back into that creative flow. Like for the longest time, it was all bugs and bugs. So like it's always a switch when I have to like go and get creative, but I love it. But there's always this initial hesitancy whenever I'm starting anything new, even if it's just a simple new feature. I'm always a little bit hesitant at first, but as soon as I get over that little hesitancy, it all starts to flow again. So
sounds good. So usually the community is asked what they would like to see from developers, but as a developer, what would you like to see from the community, from the Songbringer community?
Oh, I guess I'd love to see some speedruns. Yeah.
Okay. Some speedruns. Hopefully the listeners out there can give you some amazing speedruns. So what's your fastest time again? I remember it being like really fast. You mentioned it last time.
I almost have beat it in an hour. Yeah. Okay.
So that is the benchmark for everyone out there listening. Hopefully they can do it faster than Nathanael can. I'm sure there's somebody out there that is a beast at this game and can share a video on YouTube or a live stream on Twitch and get an amazing time.
Yeah, so, that'd be cool.
Any update on open sourcing more of the game? Maybe your next game could be an open source game collaborated upon by the community. Because I remember you saying you got Entity Food that's open source. You've got the Rapid game for Cocos 2DX that you use is open source. And I think you mentioned one other thing as well. But like, do you plan on open sourcing more of, let's say, the game specific stuff? Maybe there's a certain algorithm you've developed or a framework that's sort of specific to the game, but you could see it being applied somewhere else, or maybe the game as a whole and future games as well.
So the other thing that I did open source was called Valtree. It's a data format which is even shorter than JSON. But as far as your question about open sourcing more of Songbringer, no, I probably will never do that. I probably won't open source all of Songbringer. I already kind of opened up my entire development process and shared all my code like live on like over 600 live streams. So I feel that I've really done a good. I already feel like I've given back enough.
Yeah.
To the open source community, And at some point, I believe that I don't know, a game should be closed source. You know what I mean? Like, this is something where I don't want tons of people to have access to the code, because I want people to be enraptured in the magic of it. You know what I mean? I want Songbringer to be an experience that you can only get by playing it. You know, I don't want people to just dissect all the code and, I don't know, like, understand all of its magic.
Yeah.
And I want it to be mysterious in a way.
Yeah, it's almost like a magic trick. Sometimes when you find out exactly how it works, it's like, okay. But when you have that sort of, that cloud of suspense, that cloud of not knowing, it just makes the experience that more engaging.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so you said you're going to be working on Songbringer 2 probably in 2018. Have you thought about maybe doing something not Songbringer related, something else? Or maybe you've already got something, maybe a smaller project in the pipelines?
Well, if I could make the time, I would love to take a lot of the music I've written over the years, even, you know, the music I wrote for Songbringer, but also music I've written in the past, and start performing it live. That would be a really cool thing. I mean, not a lot. I would never really want to be a touring, you know, full-time musician, because I love creating games so much, and I love that experience of creating artwork and programming and all that too. But I would love to be like, you know, if I could maybe do like one live performance of my music per month, that would be cool. Like, I would love to just like start sharing my music more with people in a live setting, with, you know, in a room full of people actually physically right there. Because that's one thing about creating video games that you never really, I don't know, it's like you're never really there with those people that you created the game for. They're experiencing it on their own, somewhere else on the planet. You don't get to see their face. You don't get to like see what they're experiencing and stuff. So I love performing music. I've done it before. Like, I've performed music and stuff before in the past. So I'd love to kind of have a habit of doing that in the future. Yeah, I guess time will tell if I make the time for that.
Yeah. Here's a suggestion. Maybe what you could do to potentially get started is create a video on YouTube or on Twitch, and maybe have some gameplay that people have, because obviously people have uploaded their own gameplay, their own experience of Songbringer, that playing in the background, you mute in their audio, their sound and anything that they're saying, and you playing some Songbringer music over the top, sort of live with instruments, and maybe adding a bit of a twist to it. So if it's an intense moment in the game, obviously it's got intense music, but have, let's say, more of a unique intense music for just that video.
I like that. That's cool.
Yeah.
That'd be like visuals plus audio.
Yeah. So you're actually watching their game as well, or their experience of it. Obviously it's not as live as you would like it, but then you can play your music as well, and maybe you might get inspired to implement that sort of twisted or that different music that you're doing over it in the game or in a future game.
Yeah, that's cool.
So I remember in the last developer interview last month, I asked you if you had any plans for mobile. I think you said iOS at some time, because that's what was promised on Kickstarter. Any updates on that, and any updates on whether or not you're going to consider Android based on now, because obviously it's been a month since it's relaunched?
No updates there. Really, I kind of forgot about it for a minute. So yeah, the game's already it's already written with Cocos 2DX, and I've already tested it on iOS sporadically over the process of creating Songbringer, so it does already run on iOS. So it shouldn't be too much work to get that finished.
Okay, I'll be really.
And I don't know about Android yet, so yeah, I just gotta, I don't know, research that some more.
Yeah, I'll be interested in seeing what it actually feels like on a mobile device, because obviously up till now I've played it on PlayStation and on PC, but you have, you know, physical buttons. I know you can get controller attachments for mobile, but generally most games are played via the touchscreen, so I'll be interested in seeing how that works. I'm guessing you'll use some sort of on-screen D-pad sort of emulating the console controls, or do you plan on implementing something totally different, maybe motion and maybe even voice-based controls?
Definitely more of the traditional, just virtual D-pad and buttons. It'll have to be less buttons though than the PC version, because you can't get you can't get 6 fingers in there. So I think it's going to be only like 2 to, I think it might even be only 2 buttons that you'll have available, 2 to 4 or something like that. Okay. So it'll be kind of a different experience. I'm kind of worried about it, to tell you the truth. I think Songbringer plays a lot better as a gamepad PC game than it will as a virtual, control. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm kind of like worried about it, to tell you the truth. I don't think it'll be as great of an experience for the player. But it was promised during the Kickstarter. Yeah.
So maybe you could potentially sort of change the song. But obviously, this will be more work for you, and obviously it's your choice, and you want to concentrate on other stuff as well. But maybe sort of change the gameplay slightly, so almost like simplify it in terms of the amount of inputs that are realistically required for the mobile. So you still get a lot of it, like the back end side of it, the procedural generation and the overall story. But maybe there are slight differences in the gameplay that help lend it towards mobile.
Yeah.
So that's potentially something, again, just a suggestion. So now that you've done this, do you have any plans on maybe forming more of a company, forming a team, a bunch of individuals, maybe raising funding, and just basically going bigger?
I'd love to do that. Maybe in the future, I would need the funds to do that, and so yeah, like maybe one day in the future. But for now, I guess I'm just gonna have to keep on rolling solo.
Keep on rolling solo. Okay, sounds good. For the next game, Songbringer or otherwise, do you plan on using a crowdfunding platform like Kickstarter, or do you plan on bootstrapping it, at least initially?
Well, yeah. If I'm definitely my tendency would be to do another crowdfunding campaign. But I would like to do it much later in the game's life cycle. So like maybe do the first year or even 2 years, if it's going to be a 3-year game, and like make the game really almost finished, and then do a Kickstarter, because first of all, I made my Kickstarter backers wait way too long for Songbringer, because the scope of it grew, and secondly, some things, like it's hard to deliver on all the promises you make when the game is in such an early state. Like it's much better to it's easier to promise something when the game is in a more complete state and you already know how things are looking and how they're going to be ending up.
Yeah. Okay, that sounds very good. So yeah, I'm all done for questions. Do you have anything that you want to say to the community, or any questions for me, or anything else?
I think that's all.
Okay, that sounds good. So this has been a developer interview with Nathanael Weiss from Wizard Food, the creator of Songbringer. I'd like to thank Nathanael for taking the time out and jumping on to this call and doing this developer interview. Hope to talk to Nathanael soon, and I will put all the links in the description so you can check out his amazing game. You can check out his open source endeavors as well. So yeah, thanks for listening.